So I'm Jason Casden. I'm here to talk about Lentil. So in January of this year, NCSU launched a second main library called the James B. Hunt Jr. Library. It's really a stunning building, and if you make it to Code for Lib in Raleigh next year, I strongly recommend you pay a visit. This library, which was designed by Snøhetta, was really envisioned as a library of the future. We tried to focus on innovative space design, collaboration, and creativity, large-scale technology, cutting-edge technology, data visualization, and other kinds of interesting spaces. So this was really a big deal for us. And because of these ambitious goals, the experimental spaces and technology, and our desire to back up our words that this is really a space that's designed for the students, we spent a lot of work thinking about social media engagement and other types of student engagement. We wanted to build excitement about the library, and we also wanted to learn how students are using the spaces, what was working well, what could be changed. And we also wanted to document the design and planning and launch of this building. It was a historic event for our libraries and university, and Hunt's really a key space on our campus. So we wanted to think about how we could incorporate the voice of our user community into this documentation. And could we tap into social media activity? So that's how my Hunt Library was born, which we open sourced as the Lentil project to try to answer some of these questions. So my Hunt Library is basically a Ruby on Rails application, and it harvests image metadata from the Instagram API based on user tags and provides browsing views, mechanisms for sharing, tools for users to select their favorite images, an administrative interface for moderating images, a system for submitting donor agreements and harvesting images for inclusion in our digital archives, and other tools. So Lentil is an open source Rails engine that makes it straightforward to quickly deploy a similar project on a Rails capable server. So Lentil is really our attempt to combine these goals of student engagement and historical documentation and to foster meaningful and lasting user engagement. So while our library has quite a lot of experience with social media engagement, this is our first try at social media archives. So while we felt confident enough in the value of Instagram for short-term engagement, we had a lot of questions about our ability to use this to build long-term collections. We addressed most of the technical and legal issues before we started development, but we still were really unsure about how students would react. So when starting a project like this, it's worth stepping back a little bit to think about the different aspects of the user's relationship with the library. And specifically to think about how the project, especially an engagement project, enhances or stretches or plays with those qualities. So part of what made this project so exciting has been the opportunity to interact with users in new ways. It's helped me to more clearly understand some of the different features of user relationships and to think about how we might be able to work with those in the future. So before I go into all of this, the short version of the point I'm trying to argue is that with Lentil, we've helped to create bidirectional relationships within a distributed community that includes both libraries and users, supporting the expression of individual and community stories for present and future versions of a community, all centered around a key community space. And I think this is a good thing. So depending on the goals of a user, libraries can take on more or less centralized roles. With collections and subscriptions, a convincing argument that the library is essential on campus can be made. But for a lot of services, there's a role a library can play as a decentralized organization. It's one of many organizations or entities that support collaboration, focus study, media creation, research skills instruction, or whatever. So with Lentil, we attempted to focus on a model where the library is a key peer rather than a central entity. We provide special services and we add value to collections and experiences, but we draw from existing creative workflows in a minimally intrusive way. So before we started this project, we wanted to try to understand how people talked about us on social media, and specifically whether we could use that to basically recontextualize this content around our building or around our services or our institution. And so we built a little simple AngularJS prototype that searched the Instagram API for the hashtag DHHill, which is the name of our other main library. And so we had no promotional material behind this tag at all, but we found very regular and consistent use of this tag. So we found that there was some sort of group standardization of certain types of tags to describe aspects of their university life and other parts of their life. And so this was really exciting and gave us a clue for how to proceed. So we built a tool to harvest these tags, to be able to build sets of tags and harvest them on a regular basis. And we wanted to focus on tags, not that we promoted, but tags that we predicted would be used regardless of whether the system existed. We have a moderation tool, of course. We let almost everything through. So in this system, Instagram is really the central node. And the library is a peripheral one. So Instagram has users, all these people who are contributing content. There's a subset of those users who submit images that are tagged with a tag we care about, in this case, Hunt Library. And then Lentil is really just another user of Instagram. We are adding value in a way that other users may not. We're aggregating collections. We're aggregating this content. We're presenting it in a new context. We're allowing users to add subjective metadata, and we're archiving it. And so some of those Hunt Library users are also Lentil users. Some of them are going to come to our tool and interact with it. Some of them will see it in the space on the display walls. And then all of that content that's created from the users and through Instagram is going to be put on our different displays and added to our digital collections. But the cool thing about not being central is that people can participate in our system without knowing that it exists. Because this tagging is happening regardless of whether Lentil exists or not, we can harvest all of the public images that have this tag. And then later on, even for people who may not have known Lentil existed or may not have cared about it while they were students, they can still benefit from the collection as alumni. So to sort of just step through the life of a Lentil image, an image is harvested through the API when it receives a tag from a user that we care about. It's moderated. It's put through different tools that our users can basically try to select elevate a subset of the images that they find interesting. We calculate popularity scores, make sure the image is still active, and then the file's harvested and stored in a staging area. We submit a donor agreement, and then if there's no problem with the donor agreement, we package everything up and basically sever it from Instagram and from Lentil, and that's our long-term collection plan. And that's the one that's really we're still working on. So sometimes library and user relationships take on a unidirectional tone. The library assembles collections, designs instructional sessions, provides spaces, technology, reference services, and the user uses them. So Lentil is an attempt to define more of a bidirectional relationship with the user, where the creations of both the users and the libraries are truly valued by each other. So we did a lot of promotion around this project, really focused around this idea that this is an opportunity for you to determine how your library will be represented, how it will be documented. And so rather than relying purely on sort of central hired library communications work, you have an opening as a member of this community to represent your own institution. So in this sense, in terms of consumption and creation, as libraries, we provide most of the infrastructure. We develop the software. We house everything. We're going to host the images and all of that. And the users provide most of the content. This is content we really find valuable, the images and all of the other metadata. This idea of bidirectional relationships, if you're interested in this, I strongly recommend you seek out David Silber and try to see him talk. He talks about this a lot, and it's really amazing, inspiring stuff. So as we attempt to define the nature of our relationship with the Lentil user, it's also worth thinking about the setting where that exists. The sort of physical virtual library metaphors are a little tiresome, but with Lentil we try to play with the difference between our online and our physical presence a little bit, and hopefully we'll learn more about it. So like most new web apps now, we have a responsive design, good mobile interface, but our design is more responsive than a lot. And so this is a 20-plus foot long curved display wall, and this is a web-based interface of Lentil being displayed on it. And this is on rotation all the time in our library with other content, so people walking through the library can see how people are behaving in the library. People take pictures of themselves interacting with digital screens in the space. People take pictures of the technology we lend out. This is a Raspberry Pi. People send us messages about what they like. They thank us for the grad comments. And they send us complaints too, and this is my favorite hashtag, which is bag of lies for this missing socket. And people take really stunningly beautiful pictures. And these are not high-resolution pictures, but still some of our favorite pictures of our space and of people in our space have come through Instagram, through Lentil. And it's really amazing stuff. So the relationship between individual and community identities for academic library users is really interesting. Many uses of libraries like quiet studying, media creation, literature searches, sleeping, are individual experiences. but a particular user has some goal they're trying to meet, and the library provides resources and services to help. But at the same time, libraries are community spaces. So we provide popular spaces for collaborative work, for peer instruction, and for socializing. So as a particular user may shift, within a single day at the library from searching for peer-reviewed articles to collaborative data visualization to presenting to socializing or just being seen in the space. So as libraries, we're in the business of both individual and community development. My colleague Mike Nutt, who's a Lentil product lead representing our communications and outreach units, has described Lentil as a storytelling platform. So in this sense, we support the telling of individual stories as well as the community stories that those make up. We have infinite scroll, I'm sorry, but in this case, I think it's really good, actually, because we really are trying to emphasize the collection over the individual in most of our views. And the infinite scroll here in the small tile view is meant to make it as easy as possible to immerse yourself in the collection, either based on recency or popularity of what your community is talking about. There's another interesting feature of the larger physical displays, which is that you can switch from an individual to a community view by moving your feet. And so you'll see people doing this a lot, actually, where you step back far from the display and you take in the whole wall, which is sort of a mix of recent images, popular images, and staff pics. You kind of get a sense of what's going on in the community. But if you see something that you find interesting, you step closer and closer to basically physically zoom in on that. And then here's an example of someone doing that, where someone posted a picture that they had taken of themselves in the men's room being displayed on the display wall. And it says, "Shout out to myself." And we also have different tools for collecting this data to try to elevate a subset of the content above the rest based on user feedback. And so this is a battle view. This is inspired by Kitten Wars. It's basically a this or that vote where you get two random images and you pick one. There's social features for sharing on Facebook and liking images. And our staff get involved too. They submit pictures, students submit pictures of the staff, and the staff are really part of this community too. So we really like that. So how do people think about their future relationships with libraries? So this is one of our big questions going into this project. So we know that alumni become really interested in university archives after they graduate. They're always coming back and wanting to see pictures and other documents from their time at the university. But how do students think about this while they're still here? Do they have an urge to leave a mark? Do they think about how their class as a community will be represented? Even if they do they know how they can contribute to the historical record of their community? Do we know how they can? Can we use the exposure of core library practices like the development of special collections as a method for creating lasting user engagement? Can we develop a more diverse and representative collection by opening or soliciting contribution opportunities? Can we apply this approach to documenting other aspects of our community over time? So we tried to ask some students. We did a very small user study organized by my colleague, Adrian Lai. And we asked, among many other things, we did some usability testing, but one of the things we asked was, how would you feel about your photos being added to an archival collection? And we were shocked by how universally and enthusiastically positive all the responses were. In this case, we were actually running a contest in the first couple months of the project to give away an iPad mini to a winning photographer. And this person, knowing that, said she thinks having her images in the archive would be better than winning an iPad. And we've continued, as we've automatically submitted these donor agreements as comments on the images to get positive feedback. So here's a tweet of someone sort of humbly saying that being in the archives is no big deal. And here's someone else that appreciates the props. And there was an article just last week, a very timely article in Forbes about some crowdsourced transcription efforts at Smithsonian and U.S. National Archives and University of Iowa. And the quote from this article says, "Do people want to spend their free time adding to the historical record?" And according to NARA and Smithsonian, it's an unequivocal yes. So the whole idea of social media archives is really interesting, and there are a lot of questions. There's a lot of interesting work happening at George Washington and with the Social Feed Manager and Library of Congress in Iowa, and we think there's a higher collection value than item value. And we think that social media engagement, so basically, I thought I was out of time. We suspect that the weight of this value is in the collection, especially over a long period of time. And so if we can use a tool like this to document behavior around a building or maybe behavior around major events, or behavior in different sub-communities on campus, we can see how those types of activities evolve over time. So we think social media engagement is potentially a collecting opportunity. So where a lot of social media engagement efforts are really focused on shorter-term goals of getting people into the library, getting people excited, we think this is potentially an opportunity to enrich our collections, the history of our institution, our community. And we also think these kinds of open collections are an engagement opportunity in and of themselves. Since it's clear now to us that people are excited by the idea of being a permanent part of the library, we think this might be a way to create more of a permanent relationship with the library. The usage has been pretty good. This has been live for about 8.5 months. We've gotten over 2,800 images, 70,000 battles have happened, 250,000 page views. We've submitted over 1,000 donor agreements, and we've only received one objection. That came in yesterday, so I had to change my slides. Like I said, this is open source as a Rails engine. I want to specifically thank my colleague Jason Ronaldo for helping us refactor it as an engine. It should be quite straightforward to deploy, and also John Fink has Dockerized it. Thank you. Don't use it. Don't use it. It's broken now. Okay. Maybe later. And so a lot of people put a ton of work into this project. I'm just the one who's here talking today. Thank you very much.